So Astra Lost in Space Episode 2 has arrived, and walking into this week's episode, I was curious, would the impact of whatever story they were going to tell this week be as impactful as last week? Because we're no longer going to be randomly floating around in space wondering, is there another ship that they could get onto, or are they just going to die feeling like they are alone? We can no longer do that, so would it be a one-hit wonder, or would that lightning in the bottle remain for the remainder of this story? And thankfully, I can come out here saying that, honestly, I think the entire ride of Astra Lost in Space will have that magic as seen with Episode 1, but also now with Episode 2. You no longer can have them just randomly floating in space, but you can still have objects and just storylines that can really put your characters in a life or death situation that are different. With this week's episode, once again, we get the return of this weird anomaly that keeps chasing them. Seemingly, when they get comfortable and feeling like they can be saved, they could easily be sucked back into space, and there probably won't be another ship for them to get onto. But also, there will be random monsters, random creatures that they don't know should they interact with. Will they attack them? Hell, can they even eat the food that's around them? So they can still have that tension and atmosphere that we came to know and love with Episode 1, but also having that same charming atmosphere with the characters and their overall interactions and dynamics. This episode was actually even more impressive to me than the first episode, especially seen by how well the characters are getting fleshed out. Really exploring their backstory, but also, like I was mentioning last week, depending on the situation, a tropey-looking character at face value can really flourish if they're put into a situation such as this, being stranded and potentially could easily end up dead. And as we see with Quitterie in this episode, we really see some fleshing out and major development by the end of the episode. I actually was kind of expecting that the relationship between her and her sister would be something along the lines of, they clearly have a wedge, the younger sister, Funicia wants to be with her, but obviously Quitterie doesn't, and I thought maybe it was because, the mother maybe pampered her and didn't pamper the other, and maybe it'd be something pretty cliche like that, but I was actually pleasantly surprised to see the adoption angle, and how one of her mother's friends end up dead, so she adopted the daughter, but because she was such a workaholic, she never actually raised her kids and taught her kids how to love, and now you're saying to your eldest daughter, raise her and love her when you never taught her. It was actually an incredibly engaging angle to follow a character who just appeared to be obnoxious, someone who is very self-centered, and she is self-centered. I mean, it gets said in this episode when one of her childhood friends are explaining, she's selfish because she was raised by people, and it kind of altered her ego in a certain way. It was actually pretty tragic watching it play out, because you have such an adorable kid saying, this is my sister, she's beautiful, I love her, and then you have the sister being like, you're not even my real sister. And I thought it was actually incredibly engaging because, like I mentioned in last week's review, depending on your situation, characters can flourish in a way they normally can't. This type of story of an adoptive family and how one character doesn't love the other, but then eventually will come to love her, you can do it in a few different angles, but this is a totally unique angle, because typically when you have a story like this, the young adoptive sister isn't going to end up in a life or death situation where a monster can drag her away and potentially eat her, and it causes you to naturally admit to your own feelings that, hey, maybe I don't love my mother, who is technically my family, but maybe I do love this adoptive family, and she's actually more loving and nurturing than anyone in my family has ever been. And it really allows for her character to pop and really have this emotional bonding moment where she can be honest with herself, feeling as if she needs to fight back against something that her mother was forcing upon her, and actually recognize that, hey, this isn't for my mother, this is for me, this is someone who actually loves me, and I want to love her back because she actually gives me the warmth and love that I secretly crave, and maybe we can help each other out. It was a really touching moment overall, because you get a character to really flourish in a way you never would see them flourish, and they would go a very cliche route, typically with, maybe she runs away from home and then she has to chase her or something like that. You've seen that 1,000 times over, but how many times have you seen the adoptive family route go where a giant dragon-looking creature could potentially drag her off and eat her, and it causes you to use some magical flowers that will kind of levitate up and basically save you, as well as your captain. You don't see that every day, and it really allows it to flourish in a very unique fashion. We're already starting to see the backstory for quite a few characters throughout this story, and I really appreciate the fact that as we go from place to place, we'll slowly open up more and more and learn about their past. How we learned even more with, we already basically knew his father wanted to push him on the athletic path and he wanted to go on the scientific path, but it was nice to see that his entire drive to going back to the athletic path was actually so what happened to his basically teacher would never happen to anyone else, that he would have the strength, the courage, and the determination that if someone was in a life or death situation, he could pull them back up. and to see that moment play out where he's essentially just jumping from basically flower to flower. It's a very basic situation, but it became one of the most intense we've seen in the show from the past couple of episodes, because we have a little girl crying for help, begging for someone to save her as this monster is approaching her, and he has to use all his strength and courage to get to her, and as she's getting basically flown away, he has to then javelin the monster and then jump. But then, oh shit, he's actually gonna fall. Is this going to be reversed from his teacher? To then thank God Quitterie was actually smart enough to realize that maybe he shouldn't be tackling this alone. Between these three, you really got a sense of just identity and really seeing them flesh out in a very interesting way, because from face value, you might think that maybe this jockish mentality, maybe that isn't the captain you need. Maybe he's better as a vice captain, something like that, second in command. But you're really seeing that that is a leader. He's someone who can make the quick decisions, not even think and say, we have to save them. Even if you have someone who might be more logically kind of sound, he is great as a second in command, but that's not someone you want as your leader, and they all admit it. I love how there's no competition here. I really thought there would be, that someone would rise up being like, I'm better suited to be captain, and they'd kind of have like this like mini war of like who should be who, and then they'd get thrown into a life or death situation because there are butting heads who should play leader. And I'm glad that they all just recognize who should be leader. One person wants to be leader and then kind of doesn't want to be leader. But I like that, because it actually makes it feel like we're focusing on more important stories that we don't get to explore. We can focus on who should play leader, and we can focus on, characters running away from home all we want in basically any anime. We don't get a setting where they're basically lost in space, and you can have those basic settings and really make them flourish in a unique fashion. And I'm glad they're taking the route of actually doing the not so typical that you're used to seeing in anime, especially in today's climate. In this episode, there's just as much cute and fun moments as in episode 1. And this will be a style that won't be for everyone, and I totally recognize that. For me, I do enjoy it, because I feel as if, personally, even though they're in a life or death situation, and there are times where they recognize that maybe they shouldn't be having fun because shit's gonna go wrong. But I truly feel like if you had a group of kids their age from all different backgrounds, if you threw them on an island per se, right, and there was water to be seen, there was food in the trees, and they just so happened to find a boat that they just had to repair a little bit, and then they can make their way home. I truly feel as if most people in their situations could have fun. Even though, for all they know, they could easily die, they could never reach home, in this situation, they're not just floating around in space anymore. They do have ground underneath their feet. They do have a bed to sleep in, and right now they have food and water in their stomach. So I do feel as if just their banter and their just ridiculousness that is very anime designed in how, they're like, oh, I want to go fishing, I want to go hunting, just the basic things, I actually feel like it can be justified in a logical way. On one hand, I was starting to think like, could I justify this? But as I watched this episode and really kind of looked at their surroundings, this isn't like they're on a volcano, magma all around or anything like that. They're really just surrounded by forestry and just, wildlife. Nothing really was all that devastating besides the flying monsters in the sky from when they landed. So I could easily see most characters in their situation acting like this. When they were thrown into space, they were terrified and shitting their pants. But once they got into that ship and had food, at least for the time being, of course you're gonna let your guard down and feel like, holy shit, maybe I shouldn't enjoy this. But for characters such as Aries, who has never had friends, she lived in the countryside, this is a group of friends to her. Even if it's put into the worst case scenario, she does have friends now. And for a lot of these characters, it seems like maybe they've never really had a close group of friends, things like that, and they want to have that forever. We learned in this episode that someone broke the communication device, and it seems like one of our crew potentially did that, and I'm curious if the direction they're going to go is potentially like someone did sabotage it on the ship because they don't want to go home, something like that. Maybe because they just have such a bad family life, or maybe there'll be a deeper conspiracy than that. I just like how this episode, this show seems to be built on 3 layers. The first layer is the overall exploration and just seeing the unknown, be it space to just different planets and how you would explore that. And based on the scenery we see in this episode, it was really unique and just, it made it feel like a different planet, not something like Earth or something to that nature. It felt like a completely unique planet, from the plant life, the food they were eating, to just the wilderness and just the overall scope to this land. The second is the overall anime design banter, both the good and the bad. The positive, just we're gonna joke around, be anime characters, and just the holy shit, this is life or death. The third layer is the overall tension of just the unknown, whether it be that giant floating sphere coming in to suck you and throw you back into space, or a dragon-like monster that is coming to eat you. There's a way that they build out this tension and just really the dynamic camera work to really make you feel like, holy shit, I feel like I'm in this situation. For the most part, we feel like we're watching anime characters, but in those tense sequences, we're following, we're like up above, spinning around these characters, feeling like, holy shit, that something bad could happen. And I really appreciate the fact that we do have a widescreen perspective for most of the episode. From time to time, they actually have a full screen shot of the characters, whether it be a positive or a negative shot. I just love the fact that it is more cinematic because this is a cinematic experience. I really appreciate the fact that we're getting into this feeling as if we're watching a movie play out. Each episode is like a different movie in this like kind of like space exploration series where at any moment characters could live or die, and it feels as if it's truly gripping. This formula obviously won't be for everyone. You have a lot of anime design comedy with also very serious life or death situation, but for me, I feel as if just based on the age of the characters, the situation they're in, and when they do need to be fearful and not basically play high school student, it feels as if it's acceptable when they do shift from holy shit, I'm having fun with friends to oh my god, we could easily die here. I just love the idea of the uncertainty that, you know, seemingly they're on a new planet, nothing was wrong, and then in comes this sphere trying to throw them back into being scared when they were happy. It's an interesting little kind of layer to keep in the back of your mind thinking, why is this happening in the way it is? I really like Astra Lost in Space. Not only were the characters just overall pretty fun in episode 1, episode 2 is allowing characters who you might look at as just the bitchy girl or just, you know, the jockish captain, and letting them flourish and feel like a really deep layered person. And the direction they took to actually open up their characters is a lot different than you typically see with this type of story or just overall storytelling for these characters. And I think this is an exceptionally strong show right now. Like, honestly, the first 2 episodes are kind of tied in a lot of ways, but I would honestly want to give the edge to episode 2 just because of the characterization, especially for Quitterie in this episode. And I just appreciate the fact that they went the direction of family being like, you know, she has a biological mother who maybe she never loved or just thought like that's what family is, but actually kind of pushed back against the adoptive sister and said like, you know what, the adoptive sister is more family than my mother has ever been to me, and she's actually able to be honest with herself because of this situation, allowing her to flourish in such a really unique and just impressive way. I think anyone who enjoyed episode 1 of Astra Lost in Space is going to love episode 2. I was a little worried, even though I loved episode 1, I truly thought, could they recapture that magic, because we're not floating around in space anymore, and absolutely they did, and in some ways made it even more gripping in terms of the tense atmosphere when you have a character who could easily get ripped apart by just a demonic looking creature. Imagine that to Quitterie, just saying like, you're not my sister, I don't love you, and then imagining her get ripped apart. That's a very brutal sequence, and I think they really brought their A game. I think this is going to be a show that I am going to adore following week by week. You know, I had high expectations going into this episode while being a little cautious, and yeah, I'm going to be walking into episode 3 jumping for joy, knowing we're going to witness another planet, another story, another just arc where we have sabotage, we have ups and downs, and I think it's going to be a fun one to follow. The voice actors are continuing to impress me, but most importantly, the personalities are fleshing out in not cliche ways and actually becoming unique characters for this space exploration story. Let me know what everyone thought of Astra Lost in Space episode 2. Did you love it as much as myself? Your favorite moment? Where do you think episode 3 is going to go? Let me know. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy, and also hit that subscribe button if you have any news. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.